Hello, hello. Hope you're all doing well as always. To jump right into it, today we are talking about Jesus teaching about treasures. So go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 12. We're going to read verses, where did it go? 13 through 34. So someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" And then he said, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man produced a good crop. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." And then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you, and then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God." Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or about your body, what you will wear. Life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to his life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the lilies grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon, all his splendor, was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today, and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, O you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will not be exhausted, where no thief comes and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So we learn from this parable and that Jesus told that about the guy who his lands produced lots of good stuff, and he wanted to hoard it, okay? So he wanted to say, here's my pile of coins, okay, my gold coins, and he just wanted to keep it all and hoard it and live a good life and eat and drink and be merry. Well, the problem with that, and it's the same problem that we have, is that when you die someday, we're all going to die, and we don't know if it's going to be now or 10 years in the future or 50 years in the future, or who knows, only God knows. But hoarding and storing up earthly treasures and possessions is not going to do us any good, because when we die, we don't get to take any of that stuff with us, and all those things that we rely on and that we put our faith in and that we think is going to take care of us means nothing. It dissolves into a big slimy pile of goo, okay? Just like that. And even if we think, oh, well, maybe if we store up more treasures, if we have twice as much stuff, then we'll still be okay, right? Well, no. No matter how much we have stored up, it's all eventually just going to dissolve into nothing. It doesn't matter. God doesn't want us putting our faith and our trust in these things that are just going to dissolve into goo. He wants us to put our faith and our trust in Him and know that He is going to take care of us. So it's not a bad thing to have money. It's not a bad thing to have things. That's not the problem. The problem is when we put more faith and trust in those things than we do in God. We think, oh, well, I have all this money, so I'm fine. Or I have all these things, so I can take care of myself. It's I, right? It's very selfish, and, we're very proud. Pride gets in the way when we think like that. And God doesn't want any of that. He wants us to completely rely on Him and know that whether in this life or when we die, that our things, even when/if they dissolve into a pile of goo, He's still going to be there and He's still going to take care of us, right? So God calls us to be good stewards of our things, to take care of the possessions that He's blessed us with. So you should get a job and work hard, and someday when you grow up, take care of your family. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, that's a good thing, and you should do that. It says in the Bible, to work hard, to do everything that you do to work to the Lord. And so we shouldn't be lazy, and we shouldn't just think, oh, well, God's going to take care of me, so I don't need to do anything. Okay, that's not the right attitude. But He wants us to use our possessions, to use our money and our things, our talents even, for His kingdom. He wants us to, He said, give to the poor. He wants us to take care of other people. He wants us to be kind and generous and loving with our possessions, and know that He will take care of us, right? And again, I'm not saying you have to go literally sell everything that you have and go live in a box on the street. But being a good steward of the things that God has given you, a steward takes care of somebody else's stuff, okay? So all of our possessions and our money, we need to remember that it's not ours. Everything that we have is God's. There's lots of verses in the Bible, but a couple of them say, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, and the cattle on 1,000 hills are His. I mean, He made the hills and He made the cattle, so obviously it all belongs to Him, right? So being a good steward means taking good care of what God has given you. And if you're doing it properly, you're not taking care of it for selfish reasons. You're doing it because God asked you to, right? So you're using it for God's glory. You're using it to further His kingdom. So even if all your possessions and your money and your things and your stuff dissolve away into a giant pile of goo, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter, as long as you are doing it all for His glory and for His kingdom, to tell other people about Him, to show others love. So we have a couple things that survived the goo. We have some hearts. So we are to love God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind, with all our strength, right? And love others as ourselves. That is never going to dissolve, right? That's never going to turn into a pile of goo. When we put our faith and our trust in Jesus, the little cross, that is not going to dissolve and turn into a pile of goo either. These things will last forever and ever and ever. And that's what God said to do, is to build up treasures in heaven where things can't destroy it. They're not going to dissolve into piles of goo. Right? I would like you guys to take some time this week and sit down and, maybe pray about it and think about it, and just try to think about what it is that you guys worry about in your lives. We all fall into worry and we all do it. So what are you worrying about right now? And try to take that and give it to Jesus and just trust Him and know that He can take care of it, whatever it is. And that you don't have to do it on your own. So when we worry, we're trying to control things. We're trying to do it by ourselves. We're trying to say, oh, well, I don't trust God enough to take care of this, so I'm going to worry about it because I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to happen. But if we trust God, who does know what's going on and who does know what's going to happen and who can control things, that seems like a much better plan, right? But we always fall into this trap of worrying about things. We worry about, like as grown-ups, we worry about more things and different things than kids. But you guys might worry about a friend who's maybe going through a hard time, or you might worry about your parents if they're having a hard time, or maybe you worry about if people will like you. Maybe you think, I hope everybody likes me, or I hope I do good at this, or maybe you do worry about money in a different level than your parents, but maybe you're like, I'm worried I don't have enough money to go do this or do that, or buy whatever it is that you want. And so we just need to take all these worries and put them at the feet of Jesus. And some things we don't even need to worry about. Some things we're like, I'm worried so-and-so won't like me. In the grand scheme of things, doesn't really matter if so-and-so likes you. No offense to you or so-and-so. If God loves you, doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks at all. And if you are worried about having enough money to buy, the most fashionable clothes because you don't want other kids to think that you're not cool or whatever, I'm not really going to sympathize with you guys, sorry, because again, the cool clothes or the latest video game or whatever is going to one day dissolve, and it's going to rust, it's going to decay, it's going to be no more, right? And you'll be in heaven, and you won't care, it won't matter at all. So when you think about these things in an eternal perspective, they really don't matter so much, right? So if we're worrying about these things that don't really matter, if you can think about it in an eternal perspective and look at it from God's point of view, that this stuff really doesn't matter, and just give it to Him, and try not to worry about it, which I know is easier said than done, but if you pray about it and try, it can happen. If you're worrying about something more important, I guess, even if maybe you're worried about a family member or a friend who's not saved, and you are praying for them and you're just worried about them, and you're like, you can take that worry and give it to God too. So that's an eternal thing that you're worrying about, because you're worrying about their soul, which is a fantastic thing to worry about. It's a fantastic thing to be concerned about. But we don't have to worry, because God is in control, right? God is the one that can save them. So if we pray to God and give that person and their soul to God, then that's the best thing that we could possibly do, right? Because He's the one that can take care of the problem. But when we worry and we, about really important things, or maybe not so important things, whatever it is that we're worrying about, it's taking that from God, and we're trying to hold on to it and trying to take care of it ourselves, and that is sin. Okay, so that's building up treasures for ourselves here on earth that don't mean anything. We need to build up treasures in heaven, so we need to love others and care for others, love God, right? So those things last for eternity, and the other things don't, right? So think about that this week. Take some time to pray and think about how you can give your worries over to God, okay? All right, guys, you all take care of yourselves and be good, and I'll see you next week.